since some folks may not know exactly who some of you are, because our list of panelists had a bit of a rotation, why don't we do a quick round, right, very briefly, basically who you are, what you're working on, what your affiliation is, and what you're working on, very briefly. Let's start with you on the end.
I am Samir Ajmani. I am the engineering director overseeing the Go team at Google. Joined the Go team in 2012. And sorry, what was the last part of the question?
What you're working on these days?
So I both have the Go team under me as well as a team working on AI agents for software developers.
Awesome. Jaana?
I'm Jaana Dogan. I work on Gemini serving APIs and agentic frameworks at Google.
Awesome. David?
That's it.
I'm David Soria Parra. I'm a member of technical staff at Anthropic, and I'm one of the co-creators of MCP, and I work on MCP.
Somebody's excited. Katie?
Wow. Hi, I'm Katie Hockman. I used to work on the Go team, and now I'm at Mercari in Japan. I've been working on their platform group with efforts in Go standardization and MCP.
Awesome. And lastly, Ian.
I'm Ian Cottrell. I was on the Go team for 7 years, and now I work on AI agents for developers.
Awesome.
And I feel a lot less popular than him.
Yes. I'll clap for you, Ian.
Thank you.
Nice. So let's start with an easy one, and I'm sure we're gonna follow some threads. So the AI hype machine is in full swing, right? As a Go developer, perhaps what is your personal technique for sort of parsing through the noise and the hype? As a Go developer, what should you be finding relevant? What is important to you?
You should be using the tools that are available for developers and seeing how well they do in helping you do your job. Our goal as the Go team is to make sure that you can be productive with Go and that the systems you build are production ready. And we are looking very closely at these AI tools, working with the model teams and the SDK teams and the tools teams to try and make it so that you're both productive and producing high quality software.
Okay.
I think I'm a bit biased because my full-time job is to explore what these models are really great for. So I try to kind of like follow up what's going on in the community and like learn from the use cases. But there are certain things that I'm really personally passionate about. For example, like I used to work on information retrieval many years ago, and NLP problems were very, very difficult. Like, so I'm trying to apply some of the problems that I used to have back in the day, and kind of like evaluate LLMs with that type of stuff. So it's been really useful to kind of pick your passion and then explore that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most important part at the moment for me is just taking a deep breath and ignoring a lot of the hype that's going on. Like if you spend as much time as I do on Twitter, which is not a good idea, you just think you're missing out on everything. And I just think that's just wrong. I would go and figure out and that's what I do, is like in the day-to-day work I do, how can I use and experiment with like one specific set of tools. For me, that's Cloud Code, of course, because I get it for free. And experiment with like how to improve my experience there and like figuring out how I can use the tools and where are the limits of the tools. And so for me, a lot of attention at the moment is around agentic CLIs for the most part, because I feel they're up-leveling the models to a degree that was previously not possible, and they made me significantly more productive at the moment. And then, of course, paying attention to some of the integrations points you might have, like MCP and others. That's the stuff I do, but it's actually quite minimal despite being at the epicenter of this. It's just like agentic frameworks and agentic CLIs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I've just started small and I just do one at a time. So like, for example, I wanted to learn how to use Cursor and I was like heavily encouraged to use it. So I was like, okay, I mean, I'll try it. And I've just spent a lot of time like just learning how do I use Cursor the best way with AI integration. And I'm not going to try to become an expert in like every single AI integration in every single IDE. Just like we're not expected to be experts in like every single language. Like it's okay to pick one thing and figure out how it works for you and then pick the next thing. So I've just been kind of going one step at a time and learning the most I can with one, and then I move on to the next one after I feel comfortable with the kind of edge cases.
I guess for me, the hype is useful to understand where the money is. It's not at all useful to understand what's good right now.
Excitement.
And to work that out, I mostly just talk to people. I find out what they're doing and what works for them and what they want to do that they can't do. That's where I'm at.
So I'm picking up on a theme here. It's basically to narrow down. Don't try and consume it all. Basically, don't drink from the fire hose. So in that sense, I think Go has very specific ways it can be impactful within the industry. Go shouldn't try to be all things to all people, right? So what can Go contribute that no other language or ecosystem can provide?
Oh, I love this question. So since like 2022, 2023, where LLMs really hit the ground, people were very excited, like, oh, these things can write code, and therefore we won't need programmers. And I think the last 3 years have been a lot about learning about all the aspects of software engineering that aren't just about writing code. And as Cameron spoke at the opening talk, Go's designed to serve software engineering. I think of AI for developers in 2 buckets. One is AI assistance, which is using AI and AI tools to help us get our jobs done, whether it's developing or operating systems. And the other is AI applications, which is to say incorporating models into your running software to solve business problems or build products. I think Go is well suited to both of those. So as Cameron sort of presented, Go as a language, its design lends itself to AI code generation and deterministic validation, whether through static checkers, dynamic checkers, unit tests, and it supports very rapid iteration. All of that plays very well with the sort of development loop that we see being developed through Cloud Code and Gemini CLI and other products like that. And then the applications you're building, the production systems, are models you talk through API calls. Go's very good at that. And the talk right after Cameron's, it was Aditya's, gave a great demo of how very simple Go software can be used to orchestrate fairly complex LLM interactions.
Yeah, I think I see a lot of opportunity in the AI application space because in my experience, there's a lot of early stage prototyping going on with Python and other languages, and I'm seeing prompting pipelines are being migrated to Go when it comes to production. And Go itself is specifically really good in terms of dealing with concurrency. So if you have multimedia streaming type of applications with large language models, it's actually a super nice sort of choice of language. We've been rebuilding a bunch of layers in our infrastructure, and we're primarily C++ users right now at Google. But I'm thinking that Go is exactly the type of language actually works. So there's that type of opportunity. I think when you think about it, especially the multimodality in live streaming, you have multiple channels of stuff coming in and out. Go is such a great language.
Right.
Well, maybe to just level set expectations here, I'm not a Go developer. so I have an outside view on this, I think. And for me, this applies to basically every language that exists, is stick to the guns that you have and be good at what you're good at. And for me, from the outside, Go is an excellent language for infrastructure in general. And that problem just doesn't go away because there is AI. In fact, if anything, it gets accelerated because you're requiring even more infrastructure, be it for inference, be it for model pipelines, be it for agentic orchestration. All of these things where a language like Go is actually quite excellent. And in fact, some of the properties you want to have in languages for this kind of infrastructure stuff that is not that critical about every nanosecond of performance, something like Go is actually quite excellent. And so funny enough, I think we're seeing even as a, of course, very Python-centric company, more and more use cases where we're going to use Go because of infrastructure use cases in the end of the day. And I think that's still the strength of the ecosystem, and that's what you should just stick to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'll talk about a specific example. When I wanted to work on an MCP server in a hackathon, all the MCP servers that I was looking at were TypeScript. And I'm not a TypeScript developer. I know the syntax, but I'm a Go developer. I wanted to write it in Go because I find that to be a lot more readable. Like I was looking at the TypeScript code and I was kind of struggling with it. And I think that's why people like Go. One of the reasons is it's easy to read and easy to understand. To work on. And so for me, I'm like, okay, I mean, I don't actually have to write very much code at all. I mean, with a lot of these AI tools like MCP servers, it's actually the models that are doing most of the heavy lifting. And you don't actually have to write that much code. It just needs to be simple and quick to write. So for the MCP server, I wrote it in Go in like 30 or 40 lines, and the rest of it was just like text in a prompt. And then the rest of it's just heavy lifting by the AI agent. So I didn't have to write that much Go, and it worked great though. So I don't know. For me, it's easy to write, and I think that applies in this case too. So I think it's just the best solution for me, and probably for a lot of you too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think I would say we've seen in a couple of talks at this conference how these models work best when backed by strong deterministic tools. And I think Go has been leading the way in strong deterministic tools for a long time, since it was launched. You know, automatic code formatting was something that's changed the industry, and we did it. And that just keeps going on and on and on. So I think that's one of our strengths, and we play into it, we'll be in a really good place.
There's actually like a low conviction that I have. It's completely unfounded in any type of evals, but I think Go is probably one of the best languages to be generated by a model for a variety of reasons. Yeah.
So many of the folks in the room here are sort of early career folks, and we even have. If you listen to the hype machine, it's like people are telling you, don't even bother getting a computer science degree. Don't, when you come out, there's going to be no jobs for you, and on and on and on. There's all this sort of fear mongering almost around sort of the prospects. For those of us who are sort of mid and late career, we're like, okay, this seems like a new tool. I just have to learn a new tool and put that on my tool belt. But for somebody who's new and still early career, there's some fear and trepidation, right? Like how should one be, what lens should you be using to actually look through all this?
So I have two thoughts, but I want to make sure I leave enough time for everyone else. One is just how do we see the role of computer scientists and professional software engineers evolving as more code and applications can be generated, or at least in part using AI. I think that increasingly, at least examples I've seen from vibe coding platforms and application developers, they're still building on top of reliable, deterministic, scalable, secure, high-performance components, whether they're languages, runtimes, cloud services, operating systems. And increasingly, as we think that the way software is going to be created is through assemblage of those components, and they could be MCP servers, but they could also be these other things I mentioned. You still need a language and people who understand, design and scale and security and reliability. And computer scientists and tools like Go are very good for building those components. But I think what we'll have is a much broader swath of humanity who can build software through assemblage. That's actually good for humanity. Like right now, in order to get value out of computing devices or your laptop, your phone, your cloud, you kind of have to go through highly paid middlemen and women, right? Which are the developers. AI allows for larger classes of software to be built, right, through assemblage, but you still have to provide the components to assemble. And I think that's a professionalized piece of item. But for juniors, I think there is a challenge, which is that sort of the simpler coding tasks that you might hand off to a junior person as part of the on-the-job learning, those will be easy to automate, right? So I do think it raises the bar for people who are coming into a junior role to become adept at using these tools to get those sort of tasks done, but also to understand the code that's being produced. And I think there's also a job for the industry to make sure that we're creating the space for people to ramp up. Mm-hmm. That's challenging to do, but we need to keep the pipeline healthy.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah.
I personally wish that AI was replacing my job, but it's not really replacing. My job is becoming harder every year. Just to be honest, I think software developers are not going away. Maybe other roles are going away because there's a lot of like bookkeeping and engagement and a lot of like organization, which is like the hard work. It's hardware scale kind of thing. You know, like if you're working on something slightly large, you need like a large team of people collaborating with each other. I think some of these tools are making software development a bit faster from an individual perspective. And some of what Samir was mentioning about like the designing stuff, like how components come together, how dots are going to connect, those are going to become the main activity. And, you know, I can write code faster, so I can connect the dots with other people faster as an individual, you know, engineer. So I need fewer people around me, actually. I feel like developers are in a much better position if they especially leverage some of the, you know, new capabilities coming from like either code generation or being able to, you know, use LLMs to either analyze, rewrite some of those stuff. So I think that we will be in a much, much better shape. But the fundamentals are, I think, more important than ever because it's all about connecting the dots and design, and a few people can really go really like far. I do think that this is the best time to be a software engineer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a difficult question for me because I think it slightly depends where on the spectrum of how much you believe AGI will happen where you are. If you're an AGI maximalist, I think you can take easily the position that in a few years, all code, or in a few months, if you will, all code will be written by machines. And you can take that position, but I think in all aspects, what is clear to me for now is that I think the job shifts a little bit. It shifts maybe dramatically to some degree, but I think a human component from my perspective will retain. And so I see, for example, that the job of the pure writing skill, the pure, even like, you know, skill in certain areas, like, for example, front-end development, I think those will get likely be significantly less important. But I think the core problem of like the ability to set out requirements, breaking down tasks, thinking about distributed systems, I think that will remain for quite a while. And I think the value of something like a CS degree or a deep expertise in a certain field, like compilers or others, I think that will for a while at least remain. And then if AGI happens, all bets are off, in my opinion. But then I think we have different problems. And so I think I'm not too worried about juniors. I think just we need to be just aware that what we're training is shifting away from pure writing skills to problem-solving skills, and I think they still matter. And it lifts the bar up, and so be it. And the reality is, I think not everybody will make that bar, to be frank. But I think plenty of people will.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think I'm maybe the rare person who's actually never really feared that AI was going to take my job. Even if it wrote literally every single line of code that I've ever written, it still wouldn't take my job. Because I don't know about you, but I don't think coding is the hardest part of my job. It's the most fun part maybe, but it's definitely not the hardest part. And I think the other aspects of software engineering, which you don't even really learn in school, you learn on the job. A lot of it is like, how do you execute effectively? How do you do things incrementally and get user feedback? How do you build in good UX? How do you improve the performance of your system? Like, I mean, there's a lot of things like that aren't just simple code that an AI can spit out in 5 minutes. I don't think that's going to change. I don't see that changing. I see universities probably just teaching you how to use the tools. It's like, IDEs didn't maybe made coding faster than, writing it in Vim for some people. But that didn't make computer science irrelevant. The internet didn't make computer science irrelevant. Programming languages are getting easier to develop. That's not made computer science irrelevant. I don't see any reason why AI is any different. It's just going to be another tool in the toolbox of engineers, which you'll learn either on the job or in school or both. So I don't really worry about it, to be honest. I think it's fine. And I think just learning how to continue to learn and continue to evolve and not get stuck in this is how I've always done it or how I've seen it done, and just being open to learning the new technology that exists and using it is the most effective way, I think, to keep yourself relevant as an engineer. And that's true, I think, in any field. So I think it's okay.
Yeah, I think the current generation of tools and any incremental improvement to them, they're just productivity tools. And I've been a professional developer for 40 years now. There's been many times that there were major changes in productivity, and every time they've said, oh, we'll need less programmers. And it's never once been true, and I don't think it will be this time either. I think we will lift our expectations, we'll try and do more. I don't think any of us are in danger.
So, if you recall, a few years ago, when cryptocurrencies were all the rage and people were speaking of riches and people losing money and everything else, blockchain was a thing. There was a lot of conversation around blockchain, energy use, and et cetera, et cetera. And some of us, that were around for that were thinking, we're a bit hypocritical now because we're throwing all this compute and everything else, all this energy usage as at these AI and LLMs, and you're like, okay, well, if we were to take a critical lens, right, to energy usage and efficiency, right, when it comes to this brand new world that we're in, how should I, right, as a developer who's using these tools, and for my career's sake, I kind of have to start using these tools, right? How should I be rationalizing or thinking about using these tools?
Yeah, I can't really speak to the training costs. I would defer to people who know more on that. On the inference time, particularly as developers, I'll mention one of the experiments we ran on the Go team when we added MCP support to the Go language server, to Go Please. We tested it out with Claude, we tested it with Gemini CLI, and what we saw is once you taught the AI orchestrator tool to use the Go toolset through the language server, task success increased, right? It was able to complete the tasks more often. Task latency decreased, so it got through faster, and token use decreased by almost half in certain tasks. And that sort of suggests that in the same way tools can help humans get things done more quickly, more reliably, more cheaply, so too can it for AI. So that suggests that as we find more ways to integrate tools with AI's, at least the productivity, the inference time stuff, the getting stuff done, that can help drive down that part of the cost.
I think there are two things going on. The first one is about more about training, and one of the advantages of having something like a generalist model is you train few big models a year and then everybody can use it, rather than everybody is training similar models again and again. So there is some sort of benefit that we are kind of conversion onto a few generalist models, the language models. The other area is the entirety of the inference pipeline is just open for optimization at every level. Models are actually getting better, but they're getting better because they rely on so many external systems, which is not necessarily like model inference. And is we're getting some of these quality gains through prompt augmentation through tooling and so on. You get a lot of efficiency. At the model inference level, we can do a lot more implicit and explicit, caching and so on. So the entirety of the efficiency is actually getting improving over time. But you can take this too far, right? These models are very generalist, and you basically use them to explore some large domain and try to find your market fit and so on. Once you figure out what your features should look like, you can also go ahead and train smaller models for that particular use case where there will be a lot of efficiency. I think people really like these models because it really gives them a general tool to be able to explore. But efficiency, as soon as something is valuable, we will go and optimize the hell out of it, right?
You had mentioned earlier the possibility of a Go optimized model. If you know what you're doing is generating Go code, you can create a much smaller model that's very good at that.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just the current set of compute, many companies that started years ago, building like better inference chips that will come up and out in the next years. And I think to Jaana's point, I very much agree there. I think, of course, the models take like a lot to train at the moment, but there are few big generalized model. And the gain, I think, is quite immense at the moment. And you can, for efficiency reasons, you will optimize eventually. Once you have something that is a bit slower moving, you have like maybe hit certain ceilings. Eventually, it becomes a matter of like how much do we optimize this. And in my mind, the productivity gain is substantial, and then we just optimize it. We will bring new hardware that will be specialized for certain use cases, and you can absolutely like distill smaller models for a specific use case, right? And I think the other aspect to that is, AI in general. Of course, we are talking here about LLMs, right? For the most part, AI is a bigger field. Some of the other models are actually quite efficient already. If you look at like the average image model, they're surprisingly small compared to like an LLM. Mm-hmm. And then even there, how far are we in? Like 3-4 years into this? It's nothing compared to like the things we have discovered. Like it took us 2 years to figure out that quantization is like a great optimization method. And so there's a bunch of other things that will happen. I would love to revisit that kind of question in like, 6 years from now, so 10 years after this whole thing started, and things will look very different, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's a really good question about like the kind of environmental impact of AI or just the responsible use of AI. I think there's a couple of things with that. I mean, one, I hope that technology around it will just get better. I mean, it's like when cars were invented, we didn't start with electric cars. We had to get there over time as we learned about fossil fuel usage.
Just about like 100 years or so.
Yeah, it took just a little while. Hopefully we'll be faster than that with this one. But I hope that it's going to get better because we're going to need to. And in the meantime, I also think that, we can also be responsible too, just like we are now. I mean, it's like how you can turn off the lights when you leave a room. I mean, hopefully everyone doesn't have all their lights on at home right now. And we all kind of collectively choose to do that. So I do think you can use it responsibly. And to your point too about like what is going to be created as a result of AI or improved as a result of AI that maybe would have taken longer to do. My hope with, like any advanced technology, that AI is going to allow us to create things that are, good for the world that maybe we would not be able to do as easily. So that's my hope. So yeah, I think it's going to be a combination of things are going to get better and more efficient, just as any technology does. We can be responsible with our usage of it, and then we can also be responsible with what we make with it. And thinking about it that way helps me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, related to your point that they're only a couple of years old, I think that goes on the other side too. We're not just working out how to make LLMs better, we're still discovering what to use them for. Like the phase we're in is a phase of discovery, and where people are willing to burn enormous amounts of money finding out how to use these things, where to use them, when to use them, what they can do, what they can't do. And at some point we'll reach the end of that phase. And we'll get to a point where we don't want to burn money anymore. We have to be conscious, and the economics of it will force us to use them only in the right place for the right things.
An alternative would be AGI is figuring out fusion.
Yeah, of course, it's all be solved.
In some interesting ways, the power hungriness, right, of all these training activities is kind of forcing some innovation in the energy space. Interestingly enough, but if you are a developer or someone who is responsible for technology in your company, and your boss, maybe the boss, comes to you and says, "Hey, we need to sprinkle some AI on this thing. I don't know what problem we're solving, but we need AI on it. We need, like everybody else out there, we need to say we're using AI." How if you could solve the problem, right, with a few well-placed, if statements, right, but your boss says you need to use AI, how do you keep your job?
Just write an MCP server, it'll be fine.
The answer is always MCP.
Oh, that's a good question. I mean, we certainly ran into that in our fields with both AI applications and AI assistants, and there was a lot of resistance, within like all the teams working in developer tools, like because these are the people who, are sort of not only did they take computer science, but they're like never wanted to stop doing what they learned in the compiler class, right? So it was sort of one of the hardest areas to shift. Ian was saying something earlier that we really need to persist through the initial friction and disappointment of these things. That when you first start playing with LMs, there's a few wow moments, like, oh, that's really cool. And then there's just the trough of disillusionment of like, this thing is just too unreliable, too hard to use, too non-deterministic to be of any use at all. I don't have a crisp answer to your question, but I will say that what's helped me is to become a novice again in certain things. I've been using Gemini CLI to contribute to open source projects implemented in tech stacks that I don't know. JavaScript, TypeScript, front end, API and API servers written in TypeScript. And there it's been really, really excellent. Like it's enabled me to do things I just would never have had the time to do. And that allows me to contribute materially. Now I'm still using my sort of systems knowledge to sort of debug what's going on, but it's really acting as a translator there. And I find that inspiring, and I try to use that mental model to say, okay, who are the people that aren't just like me for whom providing better tooling, either in what we're offering as a business or what we're offering for productivity, this could be just as transformative for them, right?
If my boss is asking me to do that, this too, if else, whatever problem, I would probably generate it with some sort of like a model, ship it, get a promo, then fix it with 2 ifs and get another promo. Thankfully, nobody's asking me to do that stuff, but I see a lot of early prototypes being wipe coded, and it's just sometimes so much easier to be able to kind of have something concrete, getting together very quickly to be able to validate it with certain stuff and so on. But I personally try to make sure that I'm wipe coding, doing a bunch of cleanup, wipe coding, doing a bunch of cleanup. And most of the people who are utilizing these tools are usually in that type of cycle, in my experience. So it's always like this, little bit of wipe coding, little bit of actually sitting together and just cleaning up stuff type of thing. It's Samir mentioned there's a lot of skepticism against these tools. So you got to figure out where they are great and what you can utilize them for. Sometimes you just design the public API and just kind of implement the internals, just wipe coding and cleaning it up. So it's important, I think, to have that type of balance.
Mm-hmm.
If my boss didn't ask me to use AI,
you'd be worried.
I would be maybe a little bit surprised. I think for me it boils down to understanding, exploring first, using, I think, what Jaana's technique. I think that's a very common scenario of vibe coding, improving it yourself, vibe coding again. And I think what we're actually doing here is we're exploring what the models are currently capable of. And I think that's something you would want to do in that scenario. And reject the initial idea of this hesitation of it's a new tool, I don't want this is weird, I don't like it, people say negative things. I think we, as a software engineers, we must stay vigilant, being open and explore what these things are capable of, understand the current limitations, but also, and I think that's what most people forget, understand the trajectory of these tools that they're on. If people people often miss the point that 1.5 years ago, most models could barely call a tool. That's 18 months ago. 12 months ago, they could mostly call a tool, but Cloud Code didn't exist, Gemini CLI didn't exist, agents were not a thing. And now we're living in a very different world, and I think the trajectory of these things is something you need to be aware of, and just because it doesn't work today, it might work tomorrow. And I think you need to be aware of it and just be open about it and just shift your things. I think as software engineers, I personally feel the software engineering trade is something a little bit more conservative that I would love it to be, and I would love to be people a bit more open. And I think and then you get a lot of things out of there. So that's just my take. And I think to Jaana's point, that effect of like just vibe code improve. I think that's just a great technique to get to know the current limitations.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I totally agree with the openness point. I mean, I'm sure none of you here are AI skeptics at all. But I was definitely one of those people that when I was first told, like, you should try to use AI, I'm like, I don't need it. I'm too smart for AI or whatever. I'm like, I don't need it, And I had this like idea and I was very resistant. But I just like opened myself up to it. It's like, okay, like I'm going to give myself some time to try it. And so, I've actually learned a lot, and I use it a lot now. Like, for example, I used VS Code for years with Go since the start of using Go in 2018. And then I was sort of like gently nudged to use Cursor, and I really didn't want to. And now, I use Cursor for my demo because I feel like it worked better because it's basically just VS Code with really good AI integration has been my experience. And so, yeah, I've tried to stay open, and I think rather than just being like, no, that's not the right use for AI. I think at least like trying is good. What I'm guessing a lot of these kind of high level execs at these companies are asking for in actuality when they say like, can you do AI with this? Is they're throwing a lot of targets at a wall and they're knowing that maybe 90% of them aren't going to hit the target, but they're willing to take that risk for that 10% that does. And we're all learning together, including them. They don't know either. They're also learning about what those targets are going to be. And then we can kind of, change the strategy to learn it from there. So that's my take.
Yeah, I think LLMs are a tool just like any other, and they come with, costs and benefits and risks and rewards. And once you understand all of those, you can have a rational conversation with your boss about the fact that, maybe it's a bit more powerful, but it'll cost a bit more and it'll be wrong 10% of the time. And is that a trade-off they're willing to accept?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Not every problem can afford to be non-deterministic, right? So final question. And I'm going to preface this by saying that you don't have to end on an optimistic note, right? If you want to throw out a cautionary, sort of a piece of advice there, you certainly can. What is the one thing you'd like everybody to walk out of here with, within the context of this conversation?
So one of the things that drove Go to prominence was that it sort of came to maturity at the same time as public cloud was becoming a thing and GitHub was becoming very popular. And a lot of the early cloud infrastructure, Docker, Kubernetes, almost the entire CNCF portfolio was written in Go by the community, right? And that's actually a lot of what built the community. We're kind of at that moment again with AI because a lot of the initial AI and ML infrastructure is coming from Python, right? And there's a lot of TypeScript as well. But as we need to move into production, you really need a substrate that's secure, reliable, efficient, scalable, trustworthy. That is Go, right? And so I think we as a community have an opportunity to really have another sort of resurgence of open source efforts to build production infrastructure for building systems that you can trust, that you can observe. Like, we don't even know what the production best practices for AI-powered systems are, right? And to drive that, I suspect in the same way that when the web was new, every business had to get on the web. And then with Google, I have to get on Google. With the App Store, I have to get an app. Sometime soon, it's like, well, if I want Gemini or ChatGPT to be able to transact with my business, I'm going to need like maybe an MCP server or an agent that executes those transactions with respect to the user. So like I say, order a Domino's pizza and it actually works. That's a lot of infrastructure, and Go is a fantastic layer for that.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I completely agree. I think this is such a greenfield moment for Go in terms of like building infrastructure ground up, because the language itself is almost like just built for this kind of stuff. Like you have processing pipeline problems, right? Like you need concurrency and you need like, it's each time I'm using Go, in terms of like, building an early prototype and whatever, I feel like, this could have been the production language for us instead of C++. So there's a huge opportunity to kind of like build that infrastructure as a community and be very, very early on. Like MCP SDK is an example, right? It could have been around 6 months ago. We need to go and like find all these gaps. And it's a huge opportunity. And if you want to do something greenfield, it's a great opportunity to just go and do it today. So I would really like recommend everybody to just kind of help us like filling those gaps.
Mm-hmm. I'm just honestly, at the moment, I'm just exceptionally excited to be in engineering in this time, because it's a massive shift, and massive shifts have a lot of opportunities and open a lot of space where we as engineers can be a driving force of like which direction do we want to go. I am stoked. I went into technology for the newness of it, for the excitement it brings with it, and a lot of that comes with the tools that I can now use. I can get just more stuff done. I can do more things on the side that I ever could do before. So I'm quite excited about it, and I feel that I think that's my positive spin on the whole thing, is that excitement. My main worry, if anything, is if people are not realistic about it in either direction, by either being too skeptic or too optimistic potentially, and maybe missing a little bit potentially the train. Mm-hmm. Like I'm a little bit worried about the web moment where you're like, well, web was a terrible technology. I'd be better off of my Swift UI on Java, and then surprise you years later that you didn't have a job. So I'm a bit worried about that part, but I'm super excited for the opportunity of which direction we can build together, and the things we can do with the technology.
If there's one thing that I hope everyone here can take away, is to not be embarrassed by what you don't know about AI. I was having a conversation with Jonathan Amsterdam and Rob Finley, who are the ones who are working on the MCP SDK. And I told them, I was like, yeah, I'm actually like an MCP beginner, which is true. I am an MCP beginner. And I'm like, I'm not an expert. And Rob turned to me, he's like, there's no such thing as an MCP expert. And he's like, genuinely, like there are people who know it maybe more or less, but like nobody's expected to be an expert. And I can't tell you how many people have come up to me over the last several months at work and kind of embarrassingly, sheepishly been like, I'm sorry, I don't know, will you help me? And it's like, yes, it's fine. So you should be doing that. Like, don't be embarrassed and don't let shame kind of stop you from asking. There's no such thing as an expert in this right now. So just try to be kind to yourself with what you don't know. That's my advice. Just be nice to yourself.
I feel like everyone's been far too positive, so I'm going to go with we're only a couple of years of Armageddon, so none of it matters. But seriously, like, we've seen a lot of transformative technologies. I think this one feels huge because everybody's seeing it. Everybody's talking about it, so it feels like a massive one. But I think it's just another transformative technology, and like all the others, we'll end up in a better place once we work it all out.
So Ian just says, it's mid. Kids say these days. Awesome. Thank you so much, Samir, Jaana, David, Katie, and Ian. I hope you all enjoyed the panel. Thank you so much for making the time. And this is it, folks.
Thank you, Johnny, and thank you, GopherCon.
Thanks.